What we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers Football Network as we welcome you to our Season 7 Week 14 NCAA recap show. Your Pitt Panthers coming off a dramatic victory away from home at the Miami Hurricanes to seal up their first ever undefeated regular season in this dynasty. 23 fourth quarter points from the Panthers. Miami did get a late consolation touchdown to draw back within 7, but the Panthers hold on to a victory. And what a storyline it was, because not only did the Panthers have an incredible touchdown run in the fourth quarter to come from behind, but some players that stepped up really fit the storyline. You had Keith Onyango scoring what ended up being the go-ahead touchdown. He was recruited from the South Florida area, so coming back home as a redshirt junior, scores the winning touchdown. Jay Ballmer, fifth-year senior, very little used in the passing game. He's kind of been our number 2 tight end his entire career, blocking, and he ends up scoring what ended up being the touchdown to pull us within a couple of points. Ran over a defender to do it, and it was an incredible play overall. CJ Kirk leading the way as he always does. Captain Kirk, 6 total touchdowns, 455 passing, 26 rushing, 5 passing TDs, and a rushing TD. 2 picks, which is not great, and a couple of them were very poor decision making on his part. So he is who he is. You know, he's a guy that takes a lot of big risks, and a lot of times they pay off. Thankfully, a lot of his risks were throwing the ball to Ceno Rogers, who had one of the best receiving games, if not the best receiving game we've ever seen in this dynasty. 5 different players caught touchdowns, which was fantastic to see. KJ Welsh, Onyango, and Onyango had the one drop of the whole game. Was another play that should have been a touchdown. He was wide open on a play-action deep ball and just dropped a pass. Should have been another touchdown. He was fantastic, though. Ceno was. A couple of contested catches. He made that one catch in quadruple coverage that was arguably the best catch I've seen in NCAA football. It was incredible. Fantastic play from him there, and just a great game overall. One of the best receiving performances in Pitt history, one of the best passing performances in Pitt history. If you want to hear more about that information, go check out my thread on Operation Sports Football Dynasties, where we kind of recap all kinds of things related to the dynasty. We add all sorts of stories beyond just the video coverage that you get here, so feel free to check that out. Defensively, we were okay. I mean, we got some pressure on the quarterback, but they ran the ball well. Their quarterback had a scramble touchdown. Passing the ball, they were okay. I actually wasn't really worried about their passing game. They did kind of go down the field pretty easily on us on that final drive in the fourth quarter when it's garbage time a little bit and we're up 2 scores. But otherwise, I thought we did a decent job on them defensively. We just gave them a lot of free yardage, turnovers. They had a pick 6, so obviously that inflates their scoring total just a little bit. You take that away, they're at 33. You take away the garbage time touchdown. So it does escalate there. They had a couple of really good players, some nice picks. Caleb Hadley's a beast. Vquain Scott had a nice game. I think DeMarcus Cook's very good. We talked about him. I mean, we know how good their defense is. The one thing they really did that forced us to pass the ball as much as we did was their defensive front was incredible. We couldn't run the ball for anything, and so we had to pass the ball if we were going to come away with the win. And thankfully, our playmakers just did what they needed to do to get us the win. Around the NCAA and around the ACC, NC State wins. Georgia Tech loses to Georgia. Virginia, we followed this game a little bit during our matchup, if you remember during that video. Virginia ends up winning against Virginia Tech. They're not going to go to a bowl, but this was basically their bowl game, knocking off a ranked rival in Virginia Tech. Barry comes in, the backup quarterback, throws 4 touchdowns and 250 yards on 10 completions. Derek Stuckey put up a Moss stat line, 3 for 115, 3 touchdowns. Obviously, Moss was, 3 for 164 or something like that, 3 touchdowns. But still, incredible game for him. Syracuse beats Boston College. Florida blows out Florida State, a team that looked good. I mean, Florida State was 8-3. They gave us a really good game, and they just get obliterated by Florida. Clemson, in a top 10 battle over South Carolina, asserts supremacy in their state, 41-24. Huge victory for the Tigers. Alford and Lyles both played, so Alford dealing with some more injury issues again. Lyles this time much less successful than he was in their comeback victory that he led. Throws a pick and has a really poor game, but Alford does enough to get them the victory beforehand. And Anthony Hunter, their star running back, 182 yards rushing as well. Huge win for South Carolina, proving that no matter who's in at quarterback, they are one of the best teams in the country, and it's going to set up an incredible ACC championship game with some crazy implications. Around the rest of the top 25, Ball State finishes off their undefeated regular season. They go to 12-0 with a win over Ohio. Going to be a great championship game for them, taking on a really good Buffalo squad. Texas Tech tells Texas, not back. 34-27 victory over the Longhorns. Giovanni Perry and company unable to get it done, so tough way to finish the regular season for Texas. Penn State 11-1, just another methodical victory as they knock off Maryland 24-6, which means Penn State will be going to the Big Ten championship game owing to that victory. Michigan does finish 7-2 in conference with a huge win in the game. Big victory over Ohio State 26-24 with a late field goal, 32 seconds left to get that win. Steve Tate goes out victorious in his Michigan career with a solid performance in the victory. Jess Hooper, 5 receptions for 68 yards and a score. Good tight end prospect. Really like the looks of him. D.D. Harris, very good game for Ohio State in the loss, but not enough. Tennessee beats Kentucky 45-23. They go to 8-4. UCLA with the win 27-21 over USC. That clinches the Pac-12 championship game for the Bruins. The winner of this game was going to go to the Pac-12 championship. It's going to be UCLA with their victory. So congrats to the Bruins, and I mean that helps our resume. Team we played this season and obliterated. Auburn beats Alabama in the Iron Bowl. Huge rivalry game, and what that really does for national implications. You can see Matt Perry, Alabama's quarterback. I don't think he'll be their quarterback next year. Just terrible. Week in and week out. He just stinks. One pick. They had De'Aaron King the year season 5 in this dynasty. They got De'Aaron King as a grad transfer, and he led them to a national championship over us in the championship game. I think Alabama's likely going to be considering the same path because I think Perry's been their quarterback. If I recall, he was their quarterback last year and this year. He's terrible. He has been so bad, wasted an incredible Alabama team. And with that loss, that's huge for them because if Alabama finished the season 11-1, their only loss is to unbeaten 12-0 LSU. If Alabama was, and Indiana 9-3, look at this Indiana squad, 7-2 in conference, tied for second in their division in the Big Ten. Really good year for them. But back to Alabama, if they win this game and go to 11-1, their only loss is to unbeaten LSU. Oklahoma 52-26 over Oklahoma State in a huge ranked battle as well. Don't want to ignore that. Look at the stat line here for Taylor Savage. The guy put on an absolute show. Austin Hall as well, one of their receivers, had a huge game for them with a ton of touchdowns. Savage goes for 442 and 5 TDs. Runs for a pair as well. 7 total touchdown performances. Austin Hall 10 for 145 and 3 scores. Guy's an absolute stud from the slot. Miller as well, 144 and 7 catches. I mean, just incredible. But back to Alabama. I mean, if they had won that game, they're in the market for potentially sneaking in as an at-large to the college football playoff, depending on how the results shake out in conference championship week, because there's going to be a ton of teams, and there's not a ton of teams in the mix right now. You're probably looking at 5, maybe 6 teams, but a couple of those lose in college football championship week, and then all of a sudden, Alabama's right in the mix maybe to sneak in as a number 4. So crazy things have happened, but Bama not in the mix anymore. Cincinnati, who was in the mix, AC Reese, just incredible. 255 passing, 118 rushing, touchdowns all over the place. Huge win for Cincinnati as they get back to winning ways against Navy after losing to Tulane. Now, as far as us, recruiting-wise from that, we don't have a ton of targets left. We do have Trey Henderson was a DT we had been looking at. We'd been locked out with him for quite some time. He decided to go to Louisiana. Zach Triplett, though, he's the only player. We've set this house rule. We can unlock one player the entire season. Zach Triplett's a guy that got on our board very, very late, and he's a guy that we are very interested in, intrigued in. We were in a battle with Tennessee and Penn State. Tennessee got his visit this past week, and they were able to secure, no commitment, but they locked us out. Penn State, though, was still in the mix, which allowed us to unlock him, and he's the one guy. And you can see if we look at Dominic Hall here, he also locked us out this week, but we cannot unlock him. We have one unlock for the entire season. We're using it right there because that's basically our number one target. We have 1, maybe 2 scholarship available at this point. He's the guy we want to take it. Trey Henderson, we missed out on. Very good target, solid looking DT, big body, run stopper, 76 overall, very solid player. We were out on him early, locked us out pretty early on. He's a player I would have loved to have gotten, especially considering we missed out on Maurice Smith as well. But, that's okay. Best of luck to him moving forward. We got a number of guys we're locked out on. Center Mark Mason Carlson, probably going to either West Virginia or Illinois. Brian Yates, 79 overall center. I mean, these guys are unbelievable. He's a +5. We fully scouted just to see where he was at. Since we can't get him anyways, I scouted all the locked out players because we're not going to be able to sign them. He looks unbelievable. Brian Yates probably going to Indiana, but a couple other MAC schools in the mix as well. +6, 79 overall. and we missed out on him. We did, of course, sign Joe Harris, who's a 78 overall, very talented player, but he's coming in as a junior. These guys would have came in as freshmen, so the growth we could have seen out of them and development, especially with offensive linemen who do typically take some time to develop, would have been fantastic because these guys are pretty solid products already. So shame that we missed out on them, but we'll make do with a lot of the lineman talent that we did bring in this year anyways. We got a couple of tackles in the class, Joe Harris the center, so I'm not unhappy with the targets that we brought in. Missed out on Antoine Brothers. Good speed for a corner. Decent man, but a guy that we're not going to lose a lot of sleep over because I want Avery Daly. He's the other player. If we are able to sign two guys on recruiting day, on signing day, Avery Daly's our other big target. Dominic Hall, we just missed out on. He's a guy who was on our board all season, but we skied him. His speed's not great, so I think it's not a huge deal that we miss out on him just because I don't know that he has the speed to play Power 5 football. But Avery Daly is kind of our number one corner target. Tim Burrell's a backup because we know we're going to be able to get him. Triplett, though, is our number one target. We're going to be a huge battle for him, more than likely, heading into the offseason, heading into signing day. Cameron Hale, another guy, if it makes it to the offseason, I may go after him because we are losing Jay Ballmer at tight end. We don't have a ton of depth there in the tight end room, and so I think that would be a good signing if we could bring him in. Taylor Savage wins NCAA Player of the Week with his 7-touchdown performance. Incredible showing. Keeps him in the Heisman race for sure. Remember, he finished, I believe, as runner-up last season in the Heisman race to Dustin Young, the Ole Miss quarterback, who ended up winning it. But Savage did win the NCAA championship last year. So, now he wants the Heisman and another title. CJ Kirk wins ACC Offensive Player of the Week. We know what he did. Incredible performance for him. Wins it again. So fantastic end of the season for CJ. I think that's the third time he's won it now this season. Looking at the Heisman race, Darion Williams Jr. still at the top, but two big-name quarterbacks that will be playing on Championship Saturday back in the mix. Calicolio of LSU and Savage of Oklahoma. Martin and Gordon will also be playing on Championship Saturday, so all four of them could overtake Darion Williams Jr., who had a kind of a down last game against Auburn, and he won't be playing because Alabama didn't make the SEC Championship game. So Heisman race still definitely up for grabs, people looking for their Heisman moment. If we look at the rankings now, this is what we were talking about going into the playoff. It's very interesting now because you have LSU and Pitt, you're clear 1 and 2, undefeated. Clemson, though, at 3 now with their win over South Carolina. Clemson plays Pitt, so you have 2 versus 3 already. You have Penn State at 4. They're playing in the Big Ten Championship. Oklahoma at 5. They're in the Big 12 Championship. Washington at 6 is in the Pac-12 Championship. The teams they're playing are just trying to play spoiler. So that's going to make it very interesting because then you do have Cincinnati who could finish 11-1. Bama now is 10-2. Ball State's 12-0. If they go 13-0, I think their schedule is so weak that there's no way they can get into the top 4. But it really makes things interesting now, depending on how Conference Championship Week shakes out, because if a couple of those teams lose, if like Penn State and Washington loses, Clemson or Pitt, one of them is going to have to lose. And so all of a sudden, Michigan's 10-2, Bama's 10-2, Ball State could be 13-0. Who gets in after them? Cincinnati could be 11-1. All of a sudden with Bama, it seemed like if Bama was 11-1, they were just sitting there. If some teams lose, Bama falls in. Now that Bama's 10-2, no idea what's going to happen around the playoff picture. It really shakes things up and makes the final weekend very, very interesting. But you can see Pitt, finally, every team in the ACC has their schedule finished now. Pitt finishes 12-0, 8-0 in conference. Virginia Tech second in the division. Could have been as good as 6-2, but they did lose to Virginia in their final game. Florida State runners-up in the Atlantic 2, 8-0 conference winners. Clemson, 11-1 on the season. Their only loss being to Oklahoma State, setting up a showdown with the Panthers in the conference championship game. NCAA Week 15, of course, this is Army-Navy week. That's the game of the week, 100%. But some other big games. Cincinnati at UCF is a huge game. App State with a big game against Louisiana Monroe. Well, I don't know if I'd say big game, but want to send out another victory here. Army needs a win over Navy to go bowl eligible. You got USF and Temple. Winner goes bowl eligible. Texas State, Georgia Southern, South Alabama, Louisiana is a huge game. The winner there wins the Sun Belt, so that's a fantastic game. Louisiana looking to go 11-1, win the conference. Coastal had a great season this year, 8-3, looking to finish up strongly, 9-3 against an Arkansas State team that's had a down year after being a real perennial power in this dynasty. And then Cincinnati, if they get a dominant win over a good UCF team that has one of the top young quarterbacks in the country, if Cincinnati gets a big win here, at 11-1, in spite of their loss, they don't have a ton of big victories, but can they put their name at least into the college football playoff picture? Let me know in the comments who would be your top 4 right now and who are the teams that you would put in as at-larges if any of those teams lose. Let me know in the comments. As always, we'll see you very soon. Take care. Hail to Pitt. Bye-bye.